Okay, so what I have here is a little wireless power module, and it has an accompanying one, and if you put in about 12 volts, depending on the distance, you get about 5 volts out. So you actually need to be like super close for it to be 5 volts. This sort of distance is about 3 point something to 4. And so they're pretty neat, they're pretty cheap. Unfortunately, not as much range as I would like, but hopefully it will still work. So my plan is, and I don't want to scratch these up too much, so I'll put down a mouse pad. I want to add wireless charging to my Corsair Void Pro wireless headset with RGB lights because, I mean, you know, what's the point of buying it if it doesn't have RGB, right? So I'm hoping to be able to kind of add in wireless charging by tucking this in behind the panel with the RGB lights. I was originally thinking possibly like by the speaker. That way you put it down on something like this headphone stand, another eBay special that I got. So then the idea is that you could put it down, hang on, let me go ahead and get it on here, on the headphone stand, and then the wireless charging thing would be there, but that's just way too far, unfortunately. So the other idea is that you put it down basically on a thing and it would have something sticking out the side that would charge it, or, you know, something. I mean, I could make something where it has like a 3D printed shape that cups to the earphone, and then you put it down and it charges and it's face down. That might work too, or I could make something that hooks onto this stand and just extends out into there. It all depends on the size of the speaker and how everything breaks down in there. I also don't know which side has like the bulk of the electronics in it, which side is going to have the battery, or if the battery is split off into both sides. This obviously has buttons on this side, so that might not be ideal. But yeah, so I figured I would document this in case I completely fucking ruin my headset. Unless I try to claim warranty, in which case I won't. So if we go ahead and, I guess, just try and get this off. Oh, that really doesn't feel good. Okay, there we go. Oh, it's super tight along that back corner. There we go. Hopefully it didn't damage anything. It felt like it was ripping up a bit there. And it looks like it's just going to be a bunch of Phillips screws. So yeah, these are pretty nice headphones. The sound quality isn't amazing compared to my Razer Megalodons. They don't have enough bass, or as much bass at least. It's not horrible, but it's not as good, even when I changed the EQ settings and customized it. I got it pretty good, like it's enjoyable to listen to. It doesn't kick nearly as hard though. And also the microphone. The microphone in these is not nearly as good as the one on the Megalodon. I don't know if that's a consequence of the microphone element, or the circuitry, or the fact that it is wireless, so it's going over a 2.4 gigahertz or some odd connection. And that's just a limit of the bandwidth, so they're prioritizing audio fidelity over, like, for what you hear versus what you're saying. I didn't get any complaints, and when you're going through, like, TeamSpeak, the people I've asked, they notice a bit of a difference, but not massively. And that makes sense. But if you're doing like a voiceover or narration or something, the Megalodon headset is a far superior microphone. And I do quite like that one. I might switch back to it for a bit. Okay, so there's a shitload of wiring in there. So unlike the Razer headset, these only have 2 wires going to the actual speaker. And so it looks like the speaker is basically glued in. So mounting a thing in here would basically be blocking off some of the element, and yeah, and then basically having it stick. So maybe push this out a little bit. Maybe not a huge amount. This is the sort of thing where I could maybe look into winding my own coil. But that's the sort of thing where it's probably maybe specific sizes work better than others. I'm not really sure. I haven't looked into it massively. But I mean, there's, there would be room to go like around the whole speaker, and then maybe that would increase range, or maybe that would affect voltage. I'm not entirely sure. I'm also going to adjust the exposure. But yeah, then basically I would just be tapping onto that. So part of the reason why I don't want to do it on this side is because I doubt there's a 5-volt line in. These are all labeled nicely. We'll go in a little further. Also, the USB is on its own little daughter board, which is held on with clips. Yeah, so basically it's, sort of like not, it's sort of isolated for if you, like, damage the USB connector. It's sort of got, like, a slightly loose fit. That way it's not a completely rigid thing you're pushing against. That does seem like it's going to make removal a slight pain. Maybe we don't have to remove that. And so I had been considering trying to swap out the microphone, but I have no clue how it goes together inside of this thing. And so the battery is probably in this side. Putting a larger battery in would be pretty nice as well, I imagine. I do think I have to try and get this thing out. So you have to remember that this has a lithium battery in it that is live and fully charged. That is really annoying, actually, to try and get back out. Let's see if I can... Oh, yeah, no, it's going to have to come out. Okay, I'm going to mess around with this without recording because it's going to take quite a while. Actually, that didn't take too long. I instead decided to grip it by these two sides and then just sort of pull it out by using my screwdriver with the tabs. And so there we have our little surface mount red and green LED that uses a light pipe for the charging. Ooh, we have our RGB connector or wiring there that's actually like glued in. So I have to be slightly careful. I'm not sure if this wheel can come off of that. I don't know how this jog wheel is made. It looks like if we kind of rotate. There we go. Okay, so our RGB light is actually just like a single one. That's then behind this light up element. And so then our receive coil would in theory fit in underneath the board. I don't know. So I also don't know how much that plastic is gonna drop the voltage. I mean, that's clearly getting, power through there. don't have a small voltmeter to solder to this thing offhand. So I guess I want to, for now, just sort of... there's lots of circuitry on the back there, God. I can say maybe just try and fit this back down or get an idea of how much it actually, how far down it sits. But looking at this, this little standoff for the board, I think it should actually be able to fit just, you know, like that. And so these are enamel coated wires, so shorts shouldn't really be a thing to worry about. At least just for testing. Yeah, I mean, that's sitting back down, and if I go ahead and try and power up the headset. Yep, that's powering up and working and everything. So the next step is to see if this gives enough power to charge the headphones. Okay, so we will go ahead and try not to burn my mouse pad, first of all. Not that it's in amazing shape, it's still pretty good. So we're just gonna get a couple decently long wires onto the charger. And then in theory, we just connect to the power and ground, either on the daughter board or on here. I think doing it on a main board is going to be slightly better for us. So one thing about this is that the transmitter needs 12 volts, and I might be able to use just like a step-up converter or something, just to make it so I can power it off USB, just so that it's a bit more computer use friendly than trying to, you know, find a 12-volt wall wart to use. This is not very good connections, but should be good enough to work. Then we'll be able to see our charge LED on the board. Okay. So let's see what sort of a distance it starts to work at. Or if it works at all. So that's got both on. Now it is like near a full charge, so I don't know. I'm gonna go check on a computer and see exactly how this behaves. So I actually just unplugged my lighting, and yeah, that is doing the orange. Oh, actually, you know what? It's probably just looking green because it is right beside that same element. I'm seeing a little bit of orange and a little bit of green, but that looks like it's probably working fine. If I can unplug that, Jesus. That's one thing, it's a micro USB, so it doesn't have the best in terms of lifespan for being plugged and unplugged repeatedly. No USB Type-C, sadly. So yeah, if we go ahead and so that's the sort of open air distance as a minimum. If I can get this in shot. There we go. So that's the open air distance at a minimum, basically. So I don't know how that's going to translate. And this also isn't meant to be like a super fast charge. This is meant to be like you put them down and it trickle charges. It's not going to charge nearly as fast as USB, obviously. So I think we should go ahead and put this down underneath. And then let's just have a look holding it down there. Okay, so should be able to see the sort of distance that I can get. If I have it lined up right. It's a little hard for me to see it, so hang on. So it is pretty close proximity. It is also fairly finicky, just in terms of maintaining the right distance. So I don't think that's a very elegant solution, although it is working through that. I don't think that's the best option. So I do think going over the ear, over the speaker, is a slightly better option. So we can actually just go ahead and test. So it is going to be blocking some of the speaker holes, but I could actually probably offset it like that, basically. And if I find the existing ear cup, I don't think that's actually going to stick out much, because then we can basically have, you know, longer distance, and also something that just like sits into the earpiece. If I can get this back in frame. So then you can see we have a fair bit of distance when it actually powers on. And obviously the closer the better for charging. So that's actually not blocking off too much of these, as you can see here. It's blocking off like partially those, but really not much at all. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and really, I guess disconnecting this is what I need to do. So let me get something to mark which one of these is where. So let's just go ahead and put a bunch of black on this one, and then black on that side. That way I can actually tell where it came from. So I do want to get an idea of how this, basically, how much space that takes up. That really is actually not blocking off too much of that at all. I really don't think that's going to have a significant effect on the sound. And then it'll basically be these two wires going in. So then I would have them pop in somewhere. See, I want to have enough slack that this can actually come off. So I might use some enamel magnet wire going from this to the charging circuitry and have it about the same length. And then I could have this board tucked in. I mean, there's probably there's loads of room there. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so let's also disconnect this. Oh, and the USB ground came off, so let's just get that back in. Now I still can charge off USB. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to heat up my hot glue gun and also get my drill ready with a very small drill bit. We'll have to do a very liberal application, or non-liberal, a very sparing application of hot glue. And then also figure out exactly, so like this cutout here is for that. But I think these spaces here, there's not really anything. So I'll poke around with this while stuff warms up. Okay, so I think right here is going to be our best spot to put the board. Just in terms of being able to mount everything nicely. And so, just for coil position, we'd basically be looking at sort of there, and that'll come through fine, yeah. So we'll just put a small hole. Let's see. I guess we'll put a small hole through right there. I guess. I'm not sure if I have something to put down. This is a barrier. Okay. So I can definitely see why they didn't do this as a factory thing. It would not be a super elegant solution to have a stand where the actual a charging thing pops into the the ear cup. I mean, that being said, obviously it could be done. It would also raise the price of these, and they're not crazy cheap headphones. They're not crazy expensive, but they were definitely something I was going back on and forth on purchasing for one. Yeah, you can't even tell. There's actually still slack in there. So only if you feel it, then you can feel that there's something in there. So that's pretty good. Okay. Oh, I'm glad they left lots of room in these. This is nice. Okay, so then the last bit is just the charging wires. And so I don't know if I have any of that enamel kicking around easily to hand. Doesn't look like I do. I'd like to use some thin, some thin stuff like this, but this is still fairly restrictive. And I want this to be as easy to work on. Well, I mean, there's lots of slack in there. Maybe I should go for something color-coded just to be fail-safe. I'll see if I can find some that's already partially apart, that way I don't have to ruin this just to get to the Well, there's actually no red and black side by side, so let's see. I'll find some wire that'll work well for it, and then we'll see how it goes. Okay, so I am worried about the... Okay, so I am worried about the 0.1 millimeter enamel wire, just with how small that's going to be in terms of current capacity, because this is charging up the headset. So I'm going to go ahead, and I did just take some of this stuff off of the off of that ribbon cable. We're going for brown and red, just because those are the colors that are close together, and they're also on the very end. So, if I go ahead and kill those lights and plug in with USB, then we should see, oops, yeah, light come on, perfect. And if I go ahead and bring this up, perfect. So now, just a matter of reassembly and a final test. And unless you actually go and feel that, there's basically no way to tell there was anything added. So then you have your headphones working as normal. Once they actually connect, they will change to a pulsing blue. There we go. And then you pop up a coil in there, and that charges even while it's on. And of course you can turn them off, and then that's actually quite warm for some reason. Maybe that's normal. I haven't had this powered on very long. Oops. Yeah, then you just have something that sits up in there in the ear cup, and it charges up the headphone. And it can't even be not massively far, but it can be like a little ways away. So it doesn't have to be an amazingly perfect, right up to their fit, although that will increase the voltage a bit. So I'm pretty happy with that. This isn't, I don't think, warm enough to make hot glue soft or anything. And this is the transmit one, so I don't know if the receive one's going to be any better. But that right there is how you add wireless charging in by the speaker of your Corsair Void Pro wireless headset. And yeah, there you go.